Before the Riderflex podcast episode of the day, a quick word from our sponsor and friends at Marketing 360.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Let me just make a... How's my hair look? Does my hair look okay? Do I need to check myself?
I think you're all set.
Krista Morgan on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Krista?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your story. I was stalking you, last night and this morning, getting ready for the podcast. And in fact, I was on the treadmill listening to podcast you did with somebody. I apologize, can't remember who the name was, but I was listening. So yeah, I'm curious to get into it, especially since I'm also not just a podcast host, but I am a founder and an entrepreneur of a small business. Riderflex, our recruiting firm now, is about $1 million recruiting firm. So as you were talking about startups and companies to invest in, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm leaning in now. I want to listen. So, but before we get into that, will you tell us about yourself personally? Maybe give us some family history. Are you from Canada? Or did you just go to school there? But anyway, give us some early stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'm Canadian, and I've lived there, most of my life, most of early childhood. We were in Germany because my parents, sold early computers to the U.S. Army around Germany, and so
really,
that's so that's where I was born.
Cool.
But spent most of my call it formative, school, all the way up to university in Montreal, which is great. So I speak terrible French, and and I try to be really nice and polite to people so they don't take away my passport, because that's the thing.
Were both your parents in sales?
Mm-hmm.
Or did they really? Is that how they met?
Sales and marketing, no, I think they met kind of through personal relationships, but they were working together. So my mom went first and then told the company she was going to leave to go and marry my dad. And then they just said, no, we'll give him a job.
Really?
And then And then my understanding is that then they made him her boss, which, as you can imagine, was great for their relationship.
Yeah, I'm sure that one worked out really well.
Yeah.
What, just you or any siblings?
No, me, and I have two brothers and a sister. So there's
two brothers and
four
a sister.
of us.
Yeah. All right, where are you at in the mix?
I am the eldest.
You are? Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's some of the early leadership skills, big time responsibilities, babysitting, all that stuff.
All that stuff. Yes. I'm just definition of eldest child. I fit all the criteria.
So you were going to school, looks like you majored in economics and poli-sci. What was the early plan? What were you going to be when you grew up?
Oh man, I don't know. I had no idea what I was going to do, honestly. I had to pick my major, and I just, my dad had studied economics, and I was like, that seems sensible. And so I just went into economics. Turned out, it was fine. I learned a lot, but it wasn't my passion. I would say, I think I had a general idea I might go into business, but I didn't really know what business was. When you're 18, you just it doesn't mean anything. So I came up, but I started working. So then I got my first job in an office, the office kind of assistant in a manufacturing firm. And then I started to learn what business was. And, I've just been in business ever since.
Yeah, but somehow now, somewhere along the line, you got this entrepreneurial bug. Were you working for somebody else and you're like, I think I want to start my own thing? Walk us into B2B Investor, right? Which you founded and eventually exited. Give us I know it's not the focus of the podcast, but walk us into how you went from a career and a regular job to, I want to be an entrepreneur, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, good question. Because I I became an entrepreneur when I was turning 30. And
Okay.
so through my 20s, I was not, you have all these entrepreneurs. They're like, I've been an entrepreneur, selling lemonade, like and on the street. And I never did any of that. So I never thought I would start my own business. I ended up getting into advertising. I moved to London when I was about 25.
Okay.
And I worked in advertising and marketing. And then, I was like, I think just a lot of little things. I started feeling like I wasn't that happy in my career. I couldn't see a path forward. I
Okay.
was just feeling like, this kind of wasn't for me. And I was talking to my dad, who lives here in Colorado,
Uh-huh.
and he and I came up. The idea for P2BI was very organic. It was like we talked about a lot of things. He told me about invoice financing, and I told him about crowdfunding. And we put those two ideas together and we started a business. And I moved to
Oh,
Colorado and I became
oh.
an entrepreneur. And I knew nothing. I didn't know how to raise money. I didn't know anything about startups or the startup scene or Silicon Valley, like this world I live in now. It was so far away from, what I was doing.
Now, were you married at the time?
Basically, I've been with my now husband. We just got married a couple of years ago, but we've been together for 17 years. So
Did you meet him in London or you met him in Canada?
in Canada, yeah, we met back in college. So
So
we
you were
moved to
like,
London together.
you were like, hey, go to London with me. I got this job. He's like, okay.
No, it was actually the opposite. He was
Oh,
like, hey, I'm going to do my master's in London. And so
I see.
I went with him. And so then when it was my turn, I was like, hey, let's go to Denver and let me start a company. And he
Let's
said,
go to Denver. I'm going to quit my job here. You quit your job too, and let's go to Denver and like be
that's,
entrepreneurs.
it sounds
Was he like,
sounds
was it,
ridiculous when you say it like that, but yes, that's what we did.
were you like, oh, it'll be fine. We can just live with my dad. We don't have to like get a house right away. That's how we can save money.
No, we definitely did. He was like, we need to have our own place right away, but yeah, it was pretty much, we'll just
Oh,
figure it out. And we came here, I started a company, and then he, found a job here, which he
hmm.
loves. And
All
now we've
right.
been here 10 years. So it's been
You
quite.
give us the short story here before we get into stage. P2B investor, how you and your dad grew it for, let's see, looks like you had it for 8 or 9 years or so, right?
Yeah, basically. So I would say it really kicked off in like 2013-ish.
Okay.
And then, we sold it in November of 19.
Okay. So, all
And
right.
yeah, so it was a great ride. I mean, so we're a financial technology company. We provided financing to small businesses. So got to work with a ton of great companies. We provided about $1 billion of financing over that time.
So it was
And
a
we
fund. You were managing a fund, or what?
No, it was kind of, but not a traditionally structured fund. So it was like a loan portfolio, and our money came from private investors that wanted to, earn a better interest rate by investing directly in loans.
Okay,
So
let
we
me
were
pause
we were
you.
like a middleman.
Okay, let me pause you right there. Did your dad have the connections with all these rich people, or how did that work?
No, we built everything ourselves, me and my dad, like we had to make connections. I built a whole network here. We everything from
Wow.
the ground up. Yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow. Well,
yeah.
okay, hold on. I'm having a vision. So you and your dad, you're meeting with me. I'm a billionaire that lives in Boulder. You're meeting with me. You're like, hey, we're starting this company and we want you to like give us a bunch of your money and we'll manage it for you, make sure it gets invested. And then I go, well, have you done this before? Well, no, not really, but we're going to be really good at it and you need to trust us.
What can I say? My dad and I are really good salespeople. So particularly my dad, I learned a lot from him. He's an
It
excellent
must have been it must have
salesperson.
been the theater. It must have been the theater and some of the acting you did in college that helped you with these
That's
selling
right.
skills.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Wow, you managed
So
to.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
I mean,
What?
look, it was like one day at a time, we learned, we raised, 100,000 and then, 1 million. And then we kept going from there. Over the course of the company, we raised about $15 million in equity and about $125 million of debt.
Wow. Congratulations. Wow. Really. I mean, that's a cool story. Really cool. I know that the podcast is not to focus on that particular business, so we can't dive into it fully, but I'm going to guess there were some scary moments in there. I'm going to guess it wasn't just smooth sailing the whole time from start to finish.
It was not. It's actually sort of the story of how it ended. It actually didn't end quite, the way I hoped it would.
Okay.
And the way it ended was actually the foundation for what I'm doing now.
Oh,
so
good
we ended
segue.
up,
Good segue.
yeah. So we ended up having basically we got involved in a fraud. So just kind of events beyond our control, our platform, got involved in this fraud, a bunch of money got lost, and we had to very quickly turn things around and like get the company to a place where the people we owed money to could like run it and get their money back. And I know. So it was a really tough, it was really tough. It was about 3 months, and I had brought in my now partner, Dan, at Stage, because he founded Stage, back in 2009. And they worked, historically, Stage has worked with companies that are some kind of distress, something's gone wrong, and they help turn them around and, make them.
Oh, and you had brought Dan in from Stage for that reason.
I had actually brought him in on a step, like sort of for something separate, like, to help me. And he was just there as this thing kind of exploded. And I've got I wrote about it on LinkedIn. So if anyone's interested, the story's on one of my LinkedIn articles.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is this like scary stuff where like your dad's trying to find people in dark alleys that took money and stuff like that? Like a movie? Is it like a movie?
It wasn't quite like a movie, but it was.
Okay.
But look, it was really hard. You build this thing, it was going really well, and then all of a sudden this crazy thing happens, kind of like COVID happened to a lot of businesses. And
sorry, I didn't mean to digress. All right, so you had brought in. All right, so anyway, you got to a better point to sell it or just close it?
No, we sold it. So it's still running today. So it's been sold. So really what happens, and this is what we do now is, the company had borrowed a bunch of money that we were then lending to businesses. And so the people we had borrowed money from, are now able to manage that portfolio and get it's cash flowing so that they can eventually, get their money back, which is really what's important. When you borrow money from people, it's important to try to pay it back to them. So we got the company, I had to make a bunch of cuts. I had to I just had to do all the hard things that you have to do when you have to quickly deal with the tough situation. And so then once it was sold, I left and I went to Bali just before COVID hit. So I was really lucky. I got to go on vacation.
Cool.
And I came back and I talked to Dan, and he said, for better, for worse, you have a real gift in these tough situations. He said, you should come and be a partner with me at Stage.
I see.
And we buy, so our fund, we buy companies that have hit some kind of a, troubled state, and they need a fresh start, right? They need new capital, they need new management. They need to say, how do we move forward? And so we buy companies and we,
distressed on the bottom line, but solid revenue and a brand in place, and it's just not being run right. Okay.
Yeah, it's usually to be honest with you, it's usually distressed on the balance sheet. Usually it's that they've borrowed more money than they can pay back. They're in trouble. They basically owe whoever it is too much money and they can't get out of it.
Well, how does that make me better? If I call you, you're just going to loan me money too. So how does that work?
Oh no, we don't loan money. We buy the company. So we come in, we negotiate with the lender. We restructure the deal. We buy the company and we partner with the entrepreneur. And we
buy as
say,
in, does the entrepreneur like get to keep a little tiny piece of equity, or how,
yeah,
I guess it depends on
yeah,
the deal,
more
right?
than, I mean, we try to make sure the entrepreneurs are still incentivized to keep going if they want to.
Gotcha.
Sometimes entrepreneurs are done when something's gone wrong. They don't want to go
Yeah.
forward. So it just
Yeah. Yeah.
depends.
So let me summarize real quick before we get into a full overview of Stage. So
Yeah.
when you were wrapping up your company and selling it, and you kind of knew Dan from Stage, and Dan knew you guys were going through some of those problems at B2B, and so he knew you had experienced that, and you were experienced at those kinds of things, and so he's like, hey, come over here and join me as a managing partner. And so then you did that in March of 2020. Hey, great time to join a new company.
Great. Yeah, pretty much. That's,
And then,
yeah,
and then,
it's a good
what did
summary.
he say then? He was like, hey, listen, thanks for joining, but the world's coming to an end now. So never mind. No, I'm just
Well,
playing.
honestly, for us, funny enough, that was the best time, right? We've seen there are a lot
Mm,
of companies that COVID just, they
mm,
got into a bad place,
mhm,
like,
mhm.
so a lot of revenue went down. So we've, if anything, when you're running a distressed fund, it's like a good time,
Well, I guess that's true, right? I guess there was some silver lining. Okay, I guess this would be a good time now. Give us the 3 minute, give us the elevator pitch for Stage as it stands today. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. So we're a private equity fund that buys, distressed companies and turns them around and gives them a second chance. Is really at our core what we do. We like to say we give companies a second act. So,
Okay. All right. And
and I think
what's your target? Is your target small, mid, certain industries? Go ahead.
so I would say typically $2 to $15 million in revenue. So
Okay.
not huge companies.
Okay.
Our industries are technology, tech-enabled service, and then consumer product companies. Right now, since last year, we've bought four companies. So
Mm,
we own a company that does provides staff and technology for brands in the retail sector. So as you can imagine, as COVID came, they were in a tough spot, but fundamentally a great company. So we bought them. We own a company that does e-commerce chat, so pre-sales chat for e-commerce. And then I own a company that makes chicken coops.
when you say were you separating yourself out from Stage for
Sorry,
certain reason
no,
in
I
that?
meant
Okay. Okay.
we
Okay.
make
Okay. All right. Just wanted to be sure.
um
Chicken coops.
chicken coops.
That's a big thing though. Like everybody's got these, I didn't
Everyone
even know.
has
I didn't
chickens.
even. My neighbor was like, "Hey man, did you know you could like rent these? It's like a rental thing. Like you pay like a monthly thing, and then like when they stop laying during the winter or whatever, they come get them and they bring them back." And I'm like, "Huh? What?"
Yeah, chickens, it's a huge growing industry, right? A lot backyard chickens have become really
Yeah,
popular. So
super.
we have a company that sells chicken coops, and then we just bought Haystack, who are a local Colorado company that make goat cheese.
It's okay. That's
So
probably another big thing, especially in Colorado. All
yeah,
right,
yeah.
you're okay. All right, you s-
So
goat cheese and chicken, goat cheese and
go.
chicken coops don't quite go with your opening line of what you invest in, but that's okay.
Well, they do consumer product. It's all
Oh, it's
consumer. So those are
okay,
consumer
okay,
products. Yeah,
okay. All
yeah.
right, all right, all
So
right.
we've got both. Yeah, tech and consumer product. And so but we're I would tell you, we're a very opportunistic fund. It's a lot about, you know, who who's bringing us the deal, what does it look like? Our job is to see value where other people don't see it.
Okay.
We like to say that we create, we create like value out of chaos. When all
Mm,
these things are going wrong, equity investors don't typically like to invest when things are going wrong, as you can
mhm,
imagine, because they
mhm.
may as well give their money to someone whose, trajectory is going up and to the right. But they're like, anyone who's been an entrepreneur, you like it, sometimes things happen and you've done everything right and something goes wrong. And I think we do a really, bad job in the startup community, especially, we say that failure is really important and failure is nothing to be ashamed of. But the truth is, like, having been an entrepreneur that felt like I failed, it did not feel like I could be open about that. It did not feel like that was supported. It felt like all of a sudden you're no longer in the winner's circle and everyone's like, okay, well, that's not where we want to focus. And so I love that, we're building this fund where we do get to say to entrepreneurs, like, this is not about you. You did not do a bad job. Just life happens. And sometimes your business doesn't go the way you hoped it would. And, wouldn't it be amazing? Like, if, I would have loved if, Stage had been able to, come in and invest in my company. I could have kept running it, in a different way.
Well, but if that would have happened, you wouldn't be where you're at today.
I wouldn't be doing
Stage,
this. Yeah, no, exactly. Right.
I mean,
So
everything kind of happens for a reason. So would this be an ideal situation for you? So, let's say I make, I don't know, I make the seed that the chickens are going to eat or whatever. And I'm doing $6 million in revenue, been in business for about 5 years. Revenue is actually up 20% last year, but I took out I grabbed a hold of some cash from various places because I was going to use that for additional sales and marketing because I really wanted to blow it up. And I thought we were going to double our revenue, but we were only up 20%, not 100%. Now I got this giant debt on my balance sheet, and I'm kind of a messy visionary entrepreneur that's not a very good operator. And so I kind of make things messy all the time with the 100 employees that I have. And I don't see us getting out of this debt, and the company's not throwing off, anywhere close to 10 or 15% of the bottom line. Is that your target?
yeah, I mean, that could absolutely be a situation we would look at.
Okay.
Like, I would say there's I guess typically, yeah, it's someone, to your point, you took capital for growth that didn't go the way you wanted it to. And now you don't have that growth to pay back that capital, and you're forced to do some kind of restructure.
When you say buy, do you only do deals you grab 100% of, or you're just as long as you're in control?
As long as we're in control. So typically we own I would say typically we own 60 to 80% of a company that we buy. So we're control. And then what's nice is we're very hands-on, right? So I am very involved in the chicken coop company. So I spend a lot of time. I know a lot about chickens and chicken coops, more than I thought I would. So partners are heavily involved. And then we have a team that does like finance, all the finance, accounting, HR, legal, all of that gets handled centrally by our fund. So we remove all that out of the companies, which makes them, one, it reduces cost because we're able to centralize. And then two, it makes them easier to sell because generally in an acquisition, there's a lot of back office that you don't need. So it's really easy for the company to just like pull out of our fund.
So what does that look like on the company's income statement if they don't have those specific overhead expenses? How does that work? How do you show that?
We show it as a management fee. So we're charging that back to the company. So, but then someone who's looking at the P&L could easily say, oh, these costs are going to go away as soon as we acquire this company.
Gotcha. All right. So you have your own internal people to do all that at Stage. They manage all that for several companies.
Yep.
So what'd you say? HR, accounting, and what else?
HR, accounting, legal, and then sort of financial modeling, like all the FP&A work that needs to be done.
Now, how does that work I don't want to dive down into a cultural HR conversation, like a full blown deal, but I'm just like, okay, well, you got several different companies. They all have different kind of cultures and styles. And you got an HR team that's trying to manage completely different personalities and styles and cultures. How does that might be a little challenging, maybe.
Yeah, it would be. So I would, typically the company, that we're dealing with fewer than 20 employees. So we're not usually managing tons of employees. I would say our HR is more like the, call it practical HR management, all the payroll, all the benefits. And then the actual culture piece is usually handled by the CEO.
Okay.
of the
Gotcha.
company.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's,
All right.
Typically
All right.
how it works.
All right, cool. And where's the money come from? Who's your target investor?
We're private, private limited partners. So generally high net worth individuals. Our first fund is relatively small. So we don't have institutional money on this fund, so like as in no big like pension funds or, sort of endowments. So this first one is a lot of people that have invested with my partner, Dan, over the last 10 years. So he has a strong track record of doing this. So we're building on his track record.
I don't know if you looked at my background before the podcast. I'm a pretty good operator, and I ran a couple of $40 million companies as a CEO and COO. So I know the game a little bit, but I never was involved with raising cash, right? Like I never had to sit across the dinner table and ask a billionaire to write $1 million check. Like I never closed a deal like that. But I have seen it done. And that is a work of art. Just that whole dance that happens. So Dan is the money raiser, or you take part in that piece too, or does he get the cash and then you focus on the operations of the business?
It's funny. I used to give a lot of advice on fundraising, and one thing I learned about fundraising, because I had to raise money and I had no idea how to do it, so I had to talk to a lot of people and do a lot of research. And I learned that, fundraising is 75% like preparation, right? Preparation of, PowerPoints, all your documents, getting your data room right, like being able to answer questions in a very professional way. Because to your point, when you want to sit across the table from a billionaire and they're like, tell me about your track record, you want to be able to give them your spreadsheet that's very easy to understand so that they can, they trust you. And then 25% of it is just call it the sales part, right? It's like having the conversations and doing the follow-up and making the connections, right? And so what Dan and I am very good at the 75% of preparation.
Gotcha.
And a lot of the follow-up and paperwork and making sure, people trust us, right? That Dan says we're going to do this and we can give them backup, to prove it. And then Dan is, this was his vision, he has a ton of turnaround experience, so we go in together. He tells his story. I talk about how the fund works, why they can trust us with their money, right? Because that is really, it's about trust in fundraising.
Which one's the chicken or the egg first? We'll go back to the chicken tie-in. Do you find an opportunity and you're like, ooh, this company right here is a good one, and then go get the cash, or is the cash already in a fund ready to roll and they've told you go find something, or both?
It's been the former, because we haven't closed the fund yet. We've been, raising money kind of on a deal by deal basis. But the plan is we have a fund, a committed capital fund, and we can just go out and buy these companies. Because usually in a situation where there's some kind of distress, you have to move quickly, right? You don't have time to take 90 days to close a deal. But right? If you're running out of cash, you're running out of cash, and then the company starts to lose people, lose customers very quickly. It starts to disintegrate. So the fund really helps us get things moving quickly.
Are your investors, last question on investors, then we can move to something different, but on the investors, are you letting these people, are these active investors that they're like, hey, I want to come to the board, I want to come to the company board meeting or whatever? Are these passive, or what, or both, or what?
Most of them right now are passive. I would say but what we would do is, like, if we had an investor who, was an expert on chicken coops, I would say, hey, would you like to sit on the board of this, chicken coop company that we're running? But no, in a fund situation, what they want to do is they want to have a relationship with the general partners.
No doubt.
And Yeah, and then they don't really get involved in the, operations, or they don't want to go into too much detail on each portfolio company.
Unless it's been 7 years since they gave you money and they want to know where their money's at.
Correct. Yeah. So hopefully that won't happen. Our aim is to be able to sell companies within, like really we
See,
target 4 years.
I mean, hey, if you can do it, if you can do it in 3 years, good for you. I mean, that's a home run, right? I mean,
Yeah.
do you know how often I've heard that from PE folks? Are like, oh yeah, target's 3 years, and I go, well, how many have you done in 3 years? Well, most of them, a lot of them stretch to 5, whatever.
Yeah,
No,
the good news about that though, and Dan, Dan always says this to people is, our goal as a fund is really to hit, like, we're like a singles and doubles fund. You get a lot of venture funds that
okay,
are all about the home
okay,
runs, and
all right,
we're about singles and doubles. Most of our money is made on the buy. Like if we buy the company right, then honestly, like the day it actually comes to us, we've usually like made money, right? The company's already more valuable than it was before we bought it. So we've gotten lift on the price. And then our target, we can sell a company we're investing $3 million and we own 80%, right? So in that scenario, we can sell a company for $12 million and make 4x our money. Sorry,
gotcha,
3x our money in
gotcha,
that scenario.
gotcha. Let me guess, you only buy a
So
company for $3 million if they actually have, like, I don't know, $3 million worth of product sitting in a warehouse that you could sell sell if you had to, and you could cash out and be like, okay, cool, we broke even. No, I'm just
kind
joking.
of, yeah, but no, it's a
It's
lot like
real.
that, right? It's about, we try to buy it for as little upfront, and then we
Yeah.
keep our cash to be able to invest in the go forward business.
I bet one of your targets, I'm going to make an assumption here. Tell me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong. Is one of your targets a founder that is just tired, man? The founder's like, okay, look, if I can just, if I personally can get 500K out of this and I'm almost 60, yeah, here, please take it, go. Is that a target for you? I mean, something like that.
Yeah, definitely that happens. We actually, I'm putting out a term sheet right now for a company where, pretty good company, 3 million, I think 3 million in sales. They've gotten underwater with their manufacturer. So they owe their manufacturer like, $1 million. And when we talk to the founder, he's like, I'm a sales and marketing guy. He's like, that's what I want to do. I'm tired of fundraising. I'm
Yep.
tired of dealing with all the finances. And
Yep.
he's like, all this stuff is happening and it's a real distraction to me just doing what I want to do, which is like build and sell this product that I love. And so
Mhm.
we came in and we're like, okay, great. Look, how about we partner, right? We'll provide you the capital. We'll handle the finance. We will do all the stuff you don't want to do. And we will just support you.
And
And
you'll put in your own CEO.
no, in that case, we would keep the CEO. We don't always
Oh.
put in our own CEO. It really depends. It
Mm,
depends if the
mm, mm.
CEO wants to stay. Not
Now
all
you
CEOs want
Right.
to.
That's right. Not all CEOs want to. Now, when you do need to put in a CEO, I know this really cool recruiting firm that's super awesome. It's called Riderflex. It's called, out of case you
Huh,
ever heard of it. No, I'm
yeah.
just joking. No, I'm not trying to turn this into a sales pitch. So if the founder wants to stay and you think they're competent, you'd leave them in place.
Yep. Or
Depends.
sometimes we
I
say
guess it
we say
depends.
you take remain founder, but we'll bring in an operator,
Yeah.
who's
I mean,
gonna
right.
help run things.
Yeah.
It really just depends. Some founders, yeah, like every situation is different. But I would tell you that like I'm a founder, our partner Ingrid is a founder, Dan's a founder. We are very sensitive to founders. Like
Okay.
we just, if I can
Mhm.
find a way to keep the founder and keep them happy, then that's my preference, because I know the value that a founder brings to a company. Like it's very hard to replicate their passion,
Yes.
and if you
Yes.
can find a way for them to stay happy, stay productive, and stay focused,
Mhm.
then then it's worth it.
I couldn't agree more.
It's just
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
always do that. Sometimes they're just done. And I can tell you, like, by the time, you know, PWI was ending, we got it sold, and all, like, by the time I was done, I was like, I can't, like, I gotta
Yeah.
go.
Yep.
There was no, even though
Yeah.
the company was still going, I was like, it's time for me, to go do something else.
Being a former ops guy, former ops executive myself, and ending up in a few turnaround situations. I was in a turnaround for an apparel company in '08 and '09, and then I've seen a few other situations where I've been involved. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time, I don't know. I would just think the majority of the time, it seems to me that there's founders that are like super visionary, super creative, idea people, got it going, had a little traction, but then the company got to a point where it really needed an operator. Like they should have hired a COO like a few years ago, but they
Yeah.
didn't. And then they keep trying. Then they try to be an operator and the visionary, and that just does not work most of the time. And then the company just goes to shit because it gets messy. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen that. Is that, do you see that all the time too?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time that's why the company's gotten into trouble, right? The founder was like, and it's funny, I can say that, and I can tell you that as a founder, I have made exactly that mistake.
Mhm.
I have spent money on the wrong things. I have not hired the right people. I was so, there were times where I was so optimistic about how something was going to go. And I
Mhm.
just couldn't, no one was going to talk me out of it. And sometimes that worked out in my favor and sometimes it didn't. And you just, you don't know. So yeah, for sure. I think, which is why I love, like, now, I was talking with my partner, Ingrid, about this. What I love about doing, the work at Stage is that I get to sit, you know, outside of the company, and I don't have that personal attachment to decisions. It's
Right.
like I can
Yes.
just say, like, look, we got to let this person go. And yeah, it's really hard. Or, hey, you're not great at this. Like, we got to bring this person in. Like, we need this talent. And it's so much easier when it's not your baby. Like, it is like
It
a
really is.
100 times
Right.
easier.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just 100 times easier. I really appreciate you saying that. It's interesting. As a recruiting firm, we will do a little bit of consulting every once in a while because I was an ops guy. I recently got called on an operational consulting gig that I passed on, but I went over, and this company was doing about, like you said, about 12, it was about 12 million bucks,
Yeah.
appliance company. And I went over, they wanted me to kind of come in and clean up the situation, be like an interim COO type deal. I was over there for 2 days. I wrote like a 5-page overview of like, here's all the shit you need to, like, this is all the stuff you're doing wrong right here. I mean, none
Yeah.
of this is rocket science. Here it is. Boom. And I came back and I called my co-founder and I said, like all that stuff I just blasted them for, like we're doing a lot of that here. Like we're making some of this, but I don't challenge my own self on it like I should. You're right. It's so easy when
Exactly.
you're outside looking in. It really is, isn't it? Wow.
Yeah,
It's
it
a-
is. And so that's what I love now is, I will say, when I was at PDBI, we had a lot of investors because we had raised a bunch of money. And what I found I didn't get from my investors was that, like, coaching and that kind of, I think of it as, what's the book, like the radical candor, this, like, sort of being very honest, but in a kind way, like
right.
with empathy,
Yeah.
and I didn't have a lot of that. I always felt like I was being, like, attacked in some
Right.
way.
Right.
And so now I really work hard to sit, with the still, even with the operators of our companies, right? They're not all founders. But it's like, hey, this is not going well. And
Mhm.
they're like, yeah, but it's just gonna be 2 more weeks or whatever. And I'm like, no, like, we're cutting it now. Like, let's just, like, we gotta
But
stop.
but Krista, we've always
I
done it. We've always done it that way. And our clients really
know.
expect that.
Yeah. But it's a lot easier once you've made all the mistakes to see it, somewhere, sort of
Uh,
in these situations. So, but I
and
think
once that,
it's what differentiates us, because when we are selling ourselves as a fund, as a partner, because our deals are, look, the deals are often hard, right? It's not the exit everyone wanted. But it is a fresh start, and it is an opportunity to have that exit, right? Because obviously we want to make money, right? We want our companies to do really well. And I think coming to the table as a founder with that empathy, having been through what, a turnaround situation, it's like I can see in the in the founders like demeanor that they're just so grateful that someone gets it, because they're
right.
Because it's hard, it's really hard, and it's really lonely.
The fact that you have that experience, I think, is huge. I really think that's going to be a huge difference maker for you guys as you grow, because, you bring in some hot shots from a big firm, turnaround firm, and Johnny comes in with Mary, and you're the founder of this $10 million company, and you're looking at Johnny and Mary. You've already checked their LinkedIn profile. Neither one of them have even owned a business before or been a startup person. They have, okay, you went to Columbia, that's cool, but you don't, but they see your profile and they know what you went through and your background, and that's so authentic. I think that makes a huge difference. I think that's huge.
Yeah, agreed. Taking my, hard experience and turning it into something good. I mean, that's all you can do, right?
Yeah.
That's because, that I learned when people say that like your experience is really valuable, you really don't believe it. You really think selling your company for $1 billion is the only thing that's going to be valuable, but on the other side of it, I get it. I get why people say it. And I can see it,
Yeah. And for the listeners, I think it's really important right now to be a good time to say this. It's not like the movies, like very few people on planet Earth are going to sell their company for billions of dollars. Like that's just not reality, right? That's not reality. I don't want entrepreneurs and anybody listening to the Riderflex podcast to think, oh, I got a business idea and I'm going to start it, and then a bunch of people are going to give me money, and then I'm going to exit in 3 years and be a billionaire. Like that, the chances of that happening are you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning. I mean, and so, if you are running a $10 million company and it's paying you $200,000 a year and you have a good lifestyle, congratulations. Good for you. Feel good about that, right? I mean, seriously. And if you call Krista and you have Stage come in and buy your company because you're struggling, and you get a nice little payout for that to like pay off your debt and pay for your house and like, I don't know, buy a little condo in Arizona and be done. Cool. Congratulations. I think that's okay. I really think it's okay for people. I think it's important to remind people that that's okay, because it's not just about cashing out for billions of dollars, because very few people are going to do that.
No, it is the journey. Like for 8 years, I got to run my company. I generally got paid once we hit a certain point. I was able to get paid. I worked with people that I loved. I loved what I did every day, even when it was hard.
Yeah.
And, and it was amazing. And it was experience. I wouldn't trade that, for having stayed in advertising and worked in like, working my way up the ladder for those 10 years. Like and most of us don't get to do what we love. So I think if you have the privilege of being a founder, and doing what you love every day, like, man, that's a gift, it really is. And it's really hard to see, because people tell you that the $1 billion exit or whatever is the only thing that matters. And, it's just not.
No, it's just not. It's so interesting you bring that up. We had somebody call us the other day that thought they might be interested in acquiring Riderflex, and they got Scott and I on the phone, and they're like, hey, you guys ever thought of, you get tired of being owners? Do you want to sell and, be an employee and stuff? And Scott was like, no, I've never had that thought. I told the nice lady that was talking to us, I said, look, here's the deal. Like, if I ever have to like send an email to a boss on a Friday and ask him if I can leave early for the afternoon again, if I ever have to do that in my life again, I'm going to shoot myself in the head. So no, I'm not interested.
Agreed. Yeah, exactly.
To your
exactly
point,
right.
the freedom, like the freedom. If you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking about starting a business and you're 30 something years old, go for it, man. Go for it. Worst case scenario, you have to go get another job if it doesn't work. Big deal. Like, go for it. I really encourage people because you're so right. I wouldn't trade building Riderflex for any amount of money. I wouldn't. I mean, Scott and I just barely paid ourselves a livable wage last year, but still the freedom and flexibility and enjoyment of doing that is so rewarding. Like I can't even put a price tag on it, to your point. If you haven't had a chance to be an entrepreneur and you're thinking about it and you listen to this episode, go for it. That's all I can tell you. People are like, oh, if it doesn't work, how am I going to make my car payment, and stuff. Okay, so they repossess your car. Who cares? Big deal. You'll get another car. Just go for it. I know we only got 7 minutes left. I want to ask you a couple of questions here. By the way, for the
Sure.
listeners, just, let me make sure everybody knows. It is stagefund.com, right? Stagefund.com. And you can look up Krista Morgan on LinkedIn. Send her a bunch of LinkedIn messages, like trying to sell her stuff because she really likes those.
Love those.
I love those. I get up and erase 10 or 15 of those every morning. Couple of last minute questions here. So we could do a whole podcast on your tips for entrepreneurs, but if you had to pick 2 or 3 things that you would tell an aspiring entrepreneur listening right now that's thinking about doing something, what would you say? Thinking about starting something.
Yeah, I would say it's really not rocket science. It is about, being curious, like being driven, and just being willing, right? Like just sort of saying yes to a lot of things, talking to a lot of people, figuring things out. I think it feels very intimidating. How do I raise money? How do I get started? How do I do this thing? And honestly, like people ask me, how did you figure it out? I'm like, I Googled a lot of, I went for a lot of coffee meetings and I Googled a lot of shit, and I figured it out, and it's not rocket science. And so that, I guess that's my advice.
How about a quick tip for anybody thinking of taking some PE money? Any quick hurdles to look out for? Anything you want to tell them?
Yes, just know who you're taking money from, in the end. Sometimes, a lot of choice and you just got to take money from whoever, but especially in a control relationship, go into it with your eyes open, ask for references, just be like aware of what you're getting into, so that you're prepared, because it is different, especially if you're a founder, like going from I'm totally in charge to now someone else is in charge is a big shift, even if you're still the CEO, even if you're still the founder. So
it's a huge deal.
I think
it's a huge deal. Yep.
So you just want to know, for good or for bad. So that'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I'm glad you touched on that. If you've been a captain for 10 years and all of a sudden you're not in control, well, that is a major cultural shift that many founders do not recover from. Like they just can't do it. They can't handle it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you look for that early when you invest. I'm sure your eagle eye, you're like watching for that right away, right? To see if it's going to be okay.
Yeah. And having a backup plan, right? On my side as private equity investor, like for us, we have backup plans because we're like, we know there's always risk. No matter how good we are, no matter what we try to do, there is always risk that the founder is going to just leave. And so, we have to get our contingency plan in place for that.
Totally agree. 2 last questions. If you could call Krista at the age of 21, coming out of school in Canada, and tell her anything based on all the stuff you've learned now so far in life, what would you tell her?
I would tell her the same things I would tell an entrepreneur, which is I would tell her to work hard and be really curious and, be willing to just say yes to a lot of things because you just never know where it's going to take you.
Okay. All right. And then the last question is core purpose. If you had to kind of define your core purpose in life, like what's the reason Krista's walking around on this blue ball in this giant black space? Beyond so now you have a beautiful new daughter, right? But let's separate your family for a minute. Aside from family, what is Krista's core purpose in life?
Oh, man, that is a tough question, but I think probably changes as you go about your life. But for right now, the Krista who's about to turn 40 this summer, so that's a big milestone.
Yeah.
I would say my core purpose is really right now I'm very much in a state of how oh God, how do I help entrepreneurs and how do I help companies be successful? That is, that's
okay.
That's what I think
you're gonna
about.
you're gonna have to put that into a smooth sentence. You can think about. I was having a glass of wine with a mentor of mine out on his back porch one day, and he's like, "What's your core purpose, man?" And I'm like, I tried to say I want to make the world a better place or something cheesy. He's like, no. He's like, no.
You need something snappier than that.
He's like, no. Yeah. He's like, no. And so then I shit you not, I came home that afternoon and my wife was in the kitchen. She was making some dinner and she looks at me. She goes, "What's wrong with you?" She goes, "You look like you're upset." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm upset. I'm 50 years old. I don't even know what my core purpose is." Anyway, I worked on it.
I love it. Well, so now I got 10 years on you. So now I'm gonna better have a really good core purpose by the time I'm 50.
Right. Krista, thank you so much for being on the Riderflex podcast. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Really enjoyed it.